Ibrahim Traoré was finishing his morning security update when the first word came in: a mining accident. He didn't know it yet, but this was only the start. What he would uncover would change everything. The presidential palace in Ouagadougou remained cool in the early hours, the harsh heat of the day not yet settling in. Seated at his desk, Traoré scanned intelligence briefings from the northern territories, where militant activity demanded constant watchfulness. Now 8 months into office, his days followed a structured flow: security at dawn, economic updates by mid-morning, diplomatic concerns in the later hours, a pattern built to manage a country still fighting to find its path forward. Defense Minister Kabori entered abruptly, breaking standard protocol. That alone meant trouble. "Mr. President, there's been an incident at the Bujura site," he said, placing an early report on the table. 17 confirmed dead, possibly more still underground. Traoré quickly reviewed the summary. Bujura, run by Goldtech International, a French-Canadian joint venture, was Burkina Faso's most important gold mine, providing almost 40% of its recorded gold exports. The document outlined a contained explosion and part of the tunnel caving in at the deepest point. "Any rescue efforts?" Traoré asked, already reaching for the phone. "Goldtech sent their emergency team," Kabori answered. "They've asked us to keep government forces away so their crew can operate freely." Something in Kabori's tone gave Traoré pause. "You sound skeptical," he said. The minister checked the room, ensuring privacy. "My cousin's on the mine's security detail. He called me privately, says Goldtech staff were destroying papers before rescue crews even got there." Traoré lowered the file, instincts sharpened by his military past. In these months as leader, he'd come to trust his gut. Something didn't add up. "Arrange my transport," he said, rising from his seat. "I'm going to Bujura." "Sir," Kabori warned, Goldtech explicitly requested. "They don't run this country," Traoré cut in. "Or they shouldn't." Kabori gave a faint, approving nod. "I'll have the chopper ready in 30. Once Kabori left, Traoré moved toward the window, watching the capital stir. Ouagadougou was a city of contradictions. Modern buildings beside colonial relics, local markets alongside foreign franchises. Even the palace he stood in symbolized French influence, its grandeur clashing with the poverty still widespread in the nation. Though rich in gold and the fastest rising producer for a decade, Burkina Faso's people had seen little benefit. The numbers didn't add up, and Traoré, once a math teacher before joining the army, couldn't ignore an equation that didn't balance. Then his aide entered with news that complicated things further. "Mr. President, the French ambassador called urgently. He's asking to meet before you head to Bujura." "Did he say why?" "Only that it involves diplomatic procedures related to international companies during incidents like this." Traoré checked the time. "Tell him I've already left. We'll talk protocol once I've seen it myself." 2 hours later, his helicopter neared the Bujura site in Burkina Faso's northeast. From above, the scale was staggering, an industrial zone carved into dry earth, with plants, offices, and housing spread across kilometers. The mine's main shaft was now swarming with rescue vehicles and staff. As they prepared to land, Traoré noticed private security guarding the perimeter, keeping journalists and locals out. His aide gestured to another chopper already grounded, marked with French diplomatic insignia. "Curious," Traoré said. "The ambassador beat the president here." On landing, a group of executives in helmets rushed forward. At the front was Philippe Marchand, Goldtech's regional head, a tall, commanding Frenchman with silver hair and a polished air of authority. Beside him stood Jean-Claude Laval, France's ambassador to Burkina Faso. His presence confirmed Traoré's fears. This was more than just a mining accident. "President Traoré," Marchand said, his grin strained, "this is quite a surprise. We're coordinating a sensitive rescue effort." "Then I won't delay you," Traoré replied. "I'm here to monitor the rescue and speak to any survivors." Laval stepped in. "Mr. President, perhaps we can brief you inside the admin building? The situation is stable, but the site isn't safe for those unfamiliar with mining." Traoré picked up on the rehearsed tone. "Ambassador," he said flatly, "I wasn't aware mine safety was part of your diplomatic duties." "Jurisdiction," Laval repeated, his smile now rigid. France has deep expertise in mining. We're simply aiding a corporate partner in an emergency. Before Traoré could reply, a stir broke out near the tunnel entrance. A stretcher was being carried up. Without hesitation, Traoré moved toward it, ignoring calls to stay back. The man on the stretcher was barely alert, his face streaked with tears that had cleared lines through the dust and soot. A medic was checking vitals and administering oxygen. Traoré knelt beside him. "What's your name, brother?" The miner's eyelids fluttered, struggling to focus, but slowly, recognition flickered. "Ouedraogo," he murmured behind the oxygen mask. "Moussa Ouedraogo." "What happened down there, Moussa?" The miner's eyes shifted uneasily toward the company executive standing nearby, then his hand gripped Traoré with unexpected force. "Not Section 7, he whispered hoarsely. "They said it was 7, but it's 12. They're lying." Marchand quickly stepped forward. "He's disoriented. Section 12 isn't in use, it's under repair." Traoré didn't break eye contact with the miner. "Why lie about which section collapsed?" Ouedraogo's voice became a faint breath. Traoré leaned closer. "The children," he said. "They don't want you to find the children." Before more could be said, medics wheeled him away. Traoré stood and turned to Marchand, whose controlled expression had faltered. "I want to inspect Section 12, he said. "Absolutely not," Marchand shot back. "That area is unsafe. We can't ensure your safety." That wasn't a request. Ambassador Laval stepped in, his diplomatic mask slipping. "Mr. President, this raises serious liability concerns. The agreement with Gold Tech limits state interference during on-site emergencies." "Show me where that's written," Traoré replied sharply. "Because I don't remember signing away my right to investigate a disaster on our land." An uneasy stillness followed. Traoré's guards had subtly moved closer, hands near their weapons. Gold Tech's private security mirrored the motion. Finally, Marchand softened his tone. "Perhaps a compromise. We can show you footage from every section of the mine. Full access, no need to risk anything." "I appreciate the gesture," Traoré said. "I'll review your recordings, after I've seen Section 12 myself." Realizing he wouldn't be dissuaded, Marchand agreed to assign an engineer to escort him. As preparations were made for the descent, Laval made one final appeal. "Your predecessor respected corporate independence in mining. It's what secured investment in Burkina Faso." Traoré met his gaze. "He's no longer in office. And now I understand why." The descent into the mine was fast and jarring. The elevator cage shook as it plunged downward, air growing thicker and hotter. Traoré had seen bunkers, caves, and war tunnels, but this felt different, a descent into the Earth's core, where men labored in places never meant for life. The guide, a nervous French technician named Gerard, spoke as the elevator dropped. "We're passing through the commercial levels. Section 12 is one of the lowest, used for exploration. But as Mr. Marchand said, it's closed right now." "Then you won't mind showing me a section that's closed," Traoré replied. Gerard hesitated. "It's just procedure." "I know procedure," Traoré said evenly. "I was military before I was president." The elevator came to a halt, 700 meters deep. When the gate opened, it revealed a dim, hot corridor reinforced with steel, the air heavy with dust and chemical residue from recent blasts. "This is Section 8, Gerard noted, checking his tablet. "The collapse happened in Section 7, just ahead. We should stop here." Traoré looked to his military aide. "Captain, what section did the miner mention?" 12, sir." "And where is Section 12 from here?" Gerard looked uneasy. "Farther down, eastward. But I'm not cleared to take you there." Traoré examined a wall-mounted schematic. "Looks easy enough. We'll find it ourselves." "Sir, I can't allow—" "Captain," Traoré interrupted calmly, "please keep Mr. Gerard comfortable while we proceed." The captain nodded and stepped between Gerard and the communications panel. Though the engineer voiced protest, he didn't act. Traoré and 2 guards advanced into the dim tunnels, following the map through narrowing paths. They eventually arrived at a secondary elevator labeled sections 9 to 14, restricted access only. Using the engineer's access card they'd quietly retained, they descended even farther underground. This new tunnel looked nothing like the others. It was more primitive, with fewer reinforcements and intermittent lighting. It clearly wasn't designed for regular operations or official visits. Following crude signs, they located Section 12. There were no signs of a recent cave-in or active rescue. Instead, they came upon a thick steel door secured with an electronic lock. The card didn't work this time. "Force it open," Traoré ordered. His guards exchanged a glance, then threw their full strength into the door. With a sharp metallic snap, the lock broke. What lay beyond would scar Traoré forever. Section 12 was no functioning mine. It was a hidden labor compound. The massive room was lined with crude bedding on bare stone. Scattered around were empty food wrappers, plastic bottles, and most disturbingly, helmets and tools made for children. "Dear God," one guard whispered. Traoré moved slowly, filming every corner with his phone. In one corner they found a logbook. The entries were clinical, emotionless, listing productivity by age. Some workers were just 9 years old, with assigned daily gold quotas. "They're using kids to reach the narrow seams," Traoré said through clenched teeth, "the ones adults can't get to." As they explored a side passage, voices echoed from deeper within. Traoré and his team hid quickly, watching as a gold tech security unit entered, led by a supervisor speaking into a radio. "The area's secured," the man reported. "All evidence is being cleared as instructed. The president won't find anything." A distorted voice responded, "Marzhan. Any sign of the missing workers?" "No, sir." After the blast, about 15 kids escaped into the auxiliary tunnels. "Still tracking them. Find them. No one can hear their story." "Got it." That was enough. Traoré stepped forward, his men drawing weapons. "I think those children are now under my authority," he said firmly. The guards froze, then raised their hands. The supervisor's radio crackled as Marzhan barked increasingly panicked commands. "Your employer," Traoré continued while lifting the radio, "will need to answer for far more than just a collapse." He spoke directly into it. "Mr. Marzhan, I hope you're ready for a very serious conversation." By the time they reached the surface, everything had changed. News of what the president discovered had already spread. Crowds had gathered, locals, workers' families, demanding accountability. Many were parents whose kids had vanished after being enrolled in Goldteca's so-called training initiatives. Marzhan and the French ambassador were trying to leave when Traoré emerged from the mine. He wasn't alone. He brought documents, photos, and worst of all for Goldtec, 3 frightened children who had hidden in a vent shaft. They were shaken but alive. "Place them under arrest," Traoré ordered, pointing to Marzhan and his executives. "Charges will include the use of child labor, human trafficking, and negligent homicide." Ambassador Laval moved forward, anger overriding his diplomatic restraint. "You can't do this," he protested. "These individuals are covered by international protections under our mining agreements." Traoré's tone turned icy. "Point me to the clause that permits enslaving children," he said. "Your company operated a forced labor site on our land. Diplomatic immunity doesn't cover that." As the executives were led away by security, Traoré addressed the growing crowd, many of whom were filming and live-streaming the moment. "Today we uncovered an unforgivable crime," he said, his voice firm and clear. "Children from our villages, forced to work in inhuman conditions, so foreign companies could mine gold that never touched our communities." He pointed to the dark mouth of the mine. What exploded down there wasn't just rock. It was a cry for freedom from kids who'd been caged underground. And instead of rescuing them, this corporation tried to erase them. That night dragged on, emotionally and physically grueling. Traoré remained on site, directing the search efforts through the darkness. By sunrise, 23 children had been located in crevices and shafts deep within the mine. Another 5 were found dead, victims of the blast or of injuries suffered while trying to escape. Each survivor carried a tragic tale. Most had been taken from struggling communities, lured by promises of education and decent pay for their families. Instead, they were trapped below ground, forced to crawl through tight spaces where grown men couldn't reach, extracting gold with tiny tools. "How long has this been happening?" Traoré asked one of the engineers who had broken ranks after witnessing the rescue. "Years," the man confessed. "Not just here. Most of the big mines run similar setups. Some are worse. Everyone in the industry knows." "Everyone," Traoré echoed. "And my government?" The engineer hesitated. Previous administrations, certain people, arrangements were made. Payments to keep quiet. In the days ahead, the full scope of the tragedy at Bujura came into focus. International watchdogs uncovered similar labor practices at other gold tech locations across the country. Records exposed a coordinated system of child exploitation, used to reach gold veins too narrow for adults. Even worse, financial audits revealed billions of dollars in hidden profits. While gold tech claimed modest revenues locally, internal reports showed massive amounts of gold funneled out via diplomatic shipments. In response, Traoré called an emergency cabinet session. Some ministers urged restraint, warning that foreign companies might pull out. "These firms provide employment," said the finance minister. "They contribute taxes. They build roads and utilities. We depend on them." "Employment," Traoré fired back. "They hire adults for peanuts and enslave our children underground." "Taxes. We've got proof they lied about their earnings." "And infrastructure. They build it for their benefit, not ours." Still, the Foreign Affairs Minister cautioned against provoking powerful allies. "The West won't look kindly on moves that threaten their mining stakes," he said. Traoré rose from his seat, cutting the debate short. "I didn't take this office to compromise on child enslavement. Begin the nationalization process, everything." 1 week after the revelations at Bujura, Ibrahim Traoré addressed the nation from the presidential palace. Millions tuned in via TV and radio as their president, clad in a plain military uniform instead of formal wear, spoke directly to them. "People of Burkina Faso, we've long been told that foreign corporations are the path to prosperity, that their money and knowledge are essential to develop our land. Yet after all these years, our communities remain impoverished, while our gold funds high-rises in Paris and Toronto." He held up a small stone glinting with gold. This came from the hands of a child at Bujura. A child who belonged in school, with friends, with dreams, not crawling underground for someone else's riches. He paused, the silence letting the weight of his words settle. "Effective immediately, all gold mining operations in Burkina Faso will be brought under national control. Foreign entities have 30 days to hand over operations to our new National Resource Authority. They will be fairly repaid for legitimate investments, but not for what they looted." He then laid out a detailed roadmap. Burkinabe engineers and workers would run the mines. Revenues would now support schools, hospitals, and infrastructure. All financials would be public, ensuring profits serve the nation, not corrupt elites or foreign investors. "This won't be simple," he admitted. "There will be pushback from those who benefited from the previous system. Economic hardship may follow as we shift to full national control. But what's worse, temporary struggle or sacrificing our children for foreign wealth?" The international backlash was immediate. Western leaders denounced the move as dangerous for global investment. Banks issued warnings of economic freefall. Old colonial powers threatened sanctions. France responded with particular hostility, recalling its ambassador and freezing Burkinabe assets held in French banks. "This breach violates numerous bilateral treaties," the French foreign minister declared. "President Traoré will learn that global agreements cannot be tossed aside without consequences." Yet something surprising followed. Neighboring nations, Mali, Niger, and Guinea, voiced their backing. China and Russia offered expertise to help run the nationalized sites. Most crucially, the Burkinabe people united behind Traoré with a patriotic energy not seen in decades. When international banks severed financial ties, communities formed local alternatives. When foreign aid was threatened, Villages pooled their own resources to support healthcare and education. A powerful wave of national unity swept the country, bridging ethnic and regional gaps. The road ahead wasn't smooth. Some foreign experts left, taking valuable knowledge with them. Equipment supply chains were temporarily disrupted. Output dropped at first. But Traoré had foreseen this. He launched rapid training programs, calling home Burkinabe professionals from abroad with patriotic appeals and good salaries. He also negotiated new supply agreements with non-Western allies. Most importantly, he was fully honest with his people, acknowledging the hard road ahead, but always emphasizing the long-term gain of national dignity. 3 months later, he welcomed global media to the Bujura mine, now under Burkinabe control. The site had undergone a striking change. Worker safety had improved, wages were fair, and profits now funded a local school built just outside the mine. Former child workers were back in classrooms, learning what they had once been denied. This, Traoré said, gesturing to the modest school, is what we call the Golden Palace, not because it's grand, but because it reflects the real worth of our gold, our children's future. A French journalist raised a question. Mr. President, Western economists warn that Burkina Faso's mining industry will collapse without foreign expertise. Your response? Traoré smiled. The same expertise that gave us child labor camps? I think we'll be fine. He pointed out the window. The same Burkinabe who did the real work before are still doing it. The only thing that's changed is who profits. Another reporter asked, what about the frozen assets in Europe? How will you endure the sanctions? We'll remember what real wealth is, Traoré replied. Is it digits in a European account, or is it the land beneath our feet, the strength of our people, and our right to determine our own future? As the press conference ended, Traoré lingered at the school, quietly watching children who had once labored underground now reading, writing, and laughing, finally free. The contrast was profound, darkness replaced by light, oppression replaced by hope. A young boy, maybe 11, approached Traoré, faint scars still visible on his cheeks from his days in the mines. Mr. President, the child said shyly, my father works at the mine now. He tells me that before, the gold made the white men rich, but now, it makes Burkina Faso strong. Is that true? Traoré bent down so they were eye to eye. What's your name? Thomas, sir. After Thomas Sankara. The president smiled warmly at the name of the iconic leader who came before him. Well, Thomas, your father is right. But true strength isn't just in the gold. It's in knowing it's ours, and deciding how we use it. The boy's face grew serious. When I grow up, I want to be an engineer, to find safer ways to get gold without sending anyone underground. Then study hard, Traoré encouraged. Burkina Faso needs engineers like you. As he exited the school, Traoré found himself reflecting on how this all began, with a report about a mining incident landing on his desk. At the time, he didn't realize it would ignite a national awakening. Once he uncovered the full truth, turning away was no longer an option. The road ahead would be treacherous. Powerful nations would not give up their grip on Africa's resources easily. There would be economic pain, foreign pressure, maybe even attempts to unseat him. But change was already spreading. Across the continent, other African nations began reassessing their own deals and questioning long-standing arrangements. It wasn't driven by speeches or campaigns. It emerged naturally, from a collective awareness that independence means little if a country's riches only benefit outsiders while its people remain in poverty. 6 months after the nationalization, Burkina Faso's gold production had recovered, but this time, the money stayed home. Schools weren't just rising in Bujura, they were being constructed across the country. Clinics were expanding. Infrastructure projects, once stalled for years, had resumed. More importantly, a new belief had taken root. Children who once faced the mines were now in classrooms, dreaming of futures as doctors, engineers, and scientists. Adults who had once labored for foreign firms now felt a stake in their own nation's progress. In his office at the palace, Traoré received constant updates. The numbers looked promising, but it was the stories that touched him most. Rescued children graduating school, villages investing in clean water, Burkinabe professionals returning home to contribute. One evening, While reading over a stack of reports, his aide entered. "Sir, you have a visitor, Musa Wedo." Traoré looked up. It was the miner whose words had first drawn his attention to the horrors of Section 12. "Mr. President," Wedo said humbly, dressed in simple work clothes, "I wanted to thank you. One of the children you saved, he's my nephew. He's in school now." Traoré stood and replied, "No, Musa. I should thank you. You were brave enough to speak up. That changed everything." Wedo shook his head. "All I did was speak. Many others have done the same, and nothing changed. You listened. You acted." As Traoré watched the man walk away, he reflected on the power of choices, the small decisions that end up shaping a legacy. The choice to investigate instead of dismiss. The choice to challenge the powerful instead of bowing to them. The choice to defend children rather than prioritize convenience. When he saw those children underground, there was only one path he could morally accept. And though that path was still fraught with challenges, though Western pressure continued their pressure campaign though, each day brought new obstacles to overcome. Ibrahim Traoré knew with absolute certainty that he had made the right choice. The gold of Burkina Faso would finally serve the people of Burkina Faso, and that was worth any price.